If you don't back off, I'll destroy everything she holds dear. And it will be on you.
Seoul never sleeps. The city lights blink from rooftop to rooftop like a million tiny stars that never go out. Glass towers stretch into the sky. Luxury cars glide down wide boulevards. The air smells like street food and possibility. This is where Ayesha Williams arrived on a Tuesday morning with 2 suitcases and a dream. She was 24 years old. Smart. Focused. The kind of girl who wrote down her goals and crossed them off one by one. She had earned a full scholarship to one of Seoul's top universities to complete her master's degree in international business. She had left everything she knew in America, her mother, her friends, her small apartment, for this chance. She had no idea the city was about to change her forever. Her first week passed in a blur of new faces and confusing subway routes. Then, at a university welcome dinner, she saw him. Minjun Kong. He stood at the far end of the room, tall and calm, wearing a dark suit like he had been born in one. He was not a student. He was one of the event sponsors, the CEO of Kong Global Industries, one of Korea's most powerful business empires. His family had built hospitals, towers, and tech companies. His name meant something in Seoul. He walked up to Ayesha and said simply, "You look like you're already planning how to take over this city." She laughed before she could stop herself. That was the beginning. Over the next few months, Minjun pursued her quietly. No grand gestures. No pressure. Just coffee dates that turned into long walks. Long walks that turned into late-night conversations about family, ambition, and fear. He was warm in a way she hadn't expected from a man so powerful. He asked about her dreams. He remembered small things she mentioned once and never again. She fell in love without realizing it was happening. And Minjun loved her back. Deeply. Completely. 6 months after they met, he sat across from her at the restaurant where they had their first meal together and said, "I want to marry you, Ayesha. I want to build something real with you." She said yes before he even finished the sentence. But that same night, as she walked home under the glow of Seoul's street lamps, her phone buzzed. An anonymous message. No name. No explanation. Just 3 photographs. In the photos, Minjun was standing close to a woman she had never seen before. They were outside a hotel. His arm was around her waist. In the last photo, they were walking inside together. The timestamp said last Friday night. Last Friday, the night he had told Ayesha he was working late. Her hands shook. Her chest felt like it was caving in. Everything they had built together. Every conversation, every promise, every whispered plan for the future, suddenly looked like a lie. She deleted his number. She blocked him everywhere. She packed the small gifts he had given her into a box and left it outside her door. She did not give him a chance to explain. She would spend the next year regretting that decision. What she didn't know yet, the photos were fake. And the man who sent them was already watching her. Heartbreak has a way of closing doors and opening others. 3 weeks after she cut Minjun off, Ayesha was walking home alone at midnight after a late study session. A group of men started following her down a quiet side street. She walked faster. They did too. Then a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. A man leaned out. He had sharp eyes and a face that was hard to forget, handsome but in a way that felt dangerous. "Get in," he said. "Those men behind you work for someone who doesn't like women who walk alone at night." She didn't know why she trusted him. Maybe she was scared enough to take the risk. She got in. His name was Hyun Park. On the surface, Hyun owned a string of upscale nightclubs across Seoul. He dressed well, spoke softly, and seemed to know everyone in the city. He was charming without trying too hard. Honest about the fact that his world was not entirely clean. "I'm not a good man," he told her once. "But I'm a careful one." What Ayesha didn't know was that Jae-hyun was one of the most feared crime bosses in Seoul. His network stretched from nightclubs to politicians. He controlled contracts, information, and fear. People who crossed him disappeared quietly. But with Ayesha he was different. He helped her when her scholarship payment was delayed and she couldn't cover rent. He showed up at her door one evening with a bag of food when she mentioned she hadn't eaten properly in days. He never asked for anything in return. Slowly, cautiously, she let her guard down. They started spending more time together. He took her to quiet corners of the city that tourists never found. He listened when she talked. He made her feel safe in a place that had once felt lonely and overwhelming. And then one evening, as they sat watching the Han River from a rooftop, she realized something that surprised her. She was falling for him. But strange things kept happening. One afternoon, a woman approached Ayesha near campus and warned her, "Be careful with Hyun Park. He doesn't do anything without a reason." When Ayesha asked Jaehyun about it later, he laughed it off. "People who've lost to me say many things." She accepted his answer. She pushed the unease aside. Then one night she found a folder on Jaehyun's desk while he stepped out of the room. It had fallen open. Inside was a printed photograph. It was a photo of Minjun. Why did Jaehyun have a photograph of her ex? She closed the folder and said nothing. But the question never left her mind. And somewhere in the back of her heart, a cold feeling started to grow. The first crack appeared on a Thursday. Ayesha had been dating Jaehyun for 7 months when she ran into Minjun's assistant at a coffee shop near campus. The assistant, a young woman named Soo-yeon, recognized her immediately. "I'm glad I found you," Soo-yeon said, pulling her aside. "There's something you need to know about those photos." Ayesha's heart went still. Soo-yeon explained that the woman in the pictures with Minjun was his cousin Ji-won. She had flown in from Canada for a surprise visit that weekend. They had gone to dinner and she had dropped her at a hotel. It was completely innocent. But someone edited those photos, Soo-yeon said. Changed the angles. Made it look like something it wasn't. Minjun spent weeks trying to find out who did it. He never told you because he didn't want you drawn into something dangerous. Ayesha sat very still. "Who sent the photos to me?" she asked. Soo-yeon hesitated. Then she said the name. Hyun Park. The world tilted. Ayesha went home and sat alone in her apartment for 2 hours. Then she confronted Jaehyun directly. She walked into his office, closed the door and told him what she knew. She expected him to deny it. He didn't. He sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. Then he told her everything. 5 years ago, Jaehyun's older brother, Taeyong, had been a financial officer at a mid-size company. A business deal gone wrong had resulted in Taeyong being arrested for fraud. The evidence had pointed to him clearly, or so it seemed. Taeyong went to prison insisting he was innocent. 18 months later he was dead. The official report said natural causes. Jaehyun had always believed it was murder. And he had always believed the man responsible was Minjun's father, Chairman Kong, who had been a senior partner in that deal. "I came up with a plan," Jaehyun said. "I was going to destroy the Kong family. Hurt them the same way they hurt mine. And you," he paused. "You were supposed to be the way I got close enough to Minjun to finish it." He looked at her. "But then I actually got to know you. And I didn't want to use you anymore. I just wanted—" "Stop," she said. She walked out. But she didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because there was still something missing. Something Soo-yeon had hinted at but hadn't fully explained. Why had Minjun stayed silent all this time? If he had known Jaehyun was behind the photos, why hadn't he told her? Why hadn't he fought back? Ayesha started digging. She used her student research access to pull business records. She called contacts she had made through her program. She talked to a professor who had connections in Seoul's corporate world. What she found broke her in a completely different way. Minjun had known about Jaehyun's plan for over a year. He had hired a private investigator who had traced the photo manipulation back to Jae-hyun's organization. But he had done nothing. Because Jae-hyun had sent him a message. Expose me and the people she loves will suffer. Stay back and she stays safe. Minjun had chosen to protect her by disappearing from her life. He had let her hate him so that she could be safe. Ayesha sat with that knowledge for a long time. Then she made a decision. She was not going to walk away from this. She was going to end it, all of it, herself. She played the role perfectly. The next morning, Ayesha called Jae-hyun and told him she needed time to process everything but that she wasn't walking away. She told him she understood why he had done it. She told him she believed he really did love her. Every word was a performance. Over the next 3 weeks she moved through his world like a ghost, attending events with him, sitting in on meetings, smiling and nodding and taking mental notes. She used her phone to photograph documents when he left the room. She recorded conversations when he spoke openly in front of her about deals and debts and people who owed him silence. She uncovered bribery, extortion, payments made to judges and government officials. Evidence linking Jae-hyun to the disappearance of 2 men who had threatened to testify against him. It was more than enough to bring him down. But then she found something she hadn't expected. Buried in a folder of old financial records was a legal analysis, something Jae-hyun's private investigator had compiled 2 years earlier. It was a full breakdown of the case that had sent Taeyong, Jae-hyun's brother, to prison. The document was detailed. It traced every piece of evidence from the original trial. It showed clearly that the evidence against Taeyong had been fabricated. And it showed who had fabricated it. Not Chairman Kong. Politician. A man named Senator Oh Byung-chul, who had been secretly stealing from the same company Taeyong worked at. When the books were about to be reviewed, he had planted false evidence pointing at Taeyong. He had paid witnesses to lie. He had used his political connections to make sure the case closed fast. Chairman Kong had been used as a scapegoat. His signature had been forged on 2 of the key documents. Jae-hyun had spent 5 years hunting the wrong man. Ayesha stared at the document for a long time. She thought about Taeyong rotting in a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit. She thought about Jae-hyun pouring his grief and rage into a war against a family that had nothing to do with his brother's death. She thought about Minjun, who had silently carried the weight of someone else's hatred for him while doing everything in his power to keep her safe. She photographed every page. Then she made her second decision. She went to see Jae-hyun one more time. She sat across from him and slid the document across his desk. "Your brother didn't die because of the Kong family," she said. "He died because of Senator Oh. He used your brother. He used your grief. He used you." Jae-hyun read the pages slowly. She watched the change move across his face, from disbelief to pain to something cold and absolute. When he looked up, his eyes were different. "Where is he?" he said. "Don't," she said. "Let me handle this the right way." "There is no right way for what he did." "There is," she said. "And I need you to trust me for the last time." But Jae-hyun was already gone, not from the room but from reason. She could see it in the way his hands had stopped shaking and gone very, very still. That night, war broke out across Seoul. And Ayesha realized she might have just lit the match. By midnight, 3 of Senator Oh's properties were burning. Jae-hyun had called in every favor, activated every contact, and sent his entire organization against the politician who had destroyed his family. Senator Oh's private security was overwhelmed within hours. His safe houses were compromised. His backup plans fell apart one by one. By 3 in the morning, the senator was at the airport running. That's where Ayesha was waiting. She had spent the night differently than Jae-hyun. While his war raged through the city, she had reached out to a journalist she trusted. A woman who had broken 3 major corruption stories in the past 2 years. She had handed over the financial records, the forged documents, and everything she had collected during her 3 weeks inside Jae-hyun's world. Then she had gone to the airport alone with her phone and one plan. She approached Senator Oh in the departures terminal. He didn't recognize her. She walked up to him calmly and said, "I have everything. Every transfer, every forged signature, every witness payment. Hyun Park's case, your bribery network, all of it. It's already with a journalist and a prosecutor." He stared at her. "But," she said, "I'll give you one chance to say it in your own words. On record. Whatever comes next will be a little less ugly for you if you do." He laughed. "Who are you?" "I'm nobody," she said. "That's why you didn't see me coming." She held up her phone. The voice memo was already running. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe he simply knew it was already over. Senator Oh Byung-chul began to talk. He confirmed everything. The framing of Taeyong. The stolen funds. The witnesses he had paid. The death in prison, which he described as something he had arranged with the word prison medical staff. The names of every official in his network. 45 minutes later, police arrived. He was arrested on the spot. The recording went to the journalist. The story broke at 6 in the morning. By noon it was the only thing anyone in Korea was talking about. The corruption network collapsed fast. Politicians resigned. Contracts were cancelled. 3 judges were suspended pending investigation. And everything Jaehyun had built, every club, every operation, every deal made in dark rooms, was seized. Jaehyun turned himself in the afternoon. He didn't run. He walked into the police station dressed in a simple black jacket, his face calm, like a man who had finally put something down that had been too heavy to carry. Ayesha was there. Before the officers took him, he stopped in front of her. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "You were supposed to be my revenge. Instead, you became the only thing I ever loved." She didn't say anything. She didn't know what to say. She watched him walk through those doors. And then she stood in the afternoon sunlight and felt something strange. Not victory, not relief, but something quieter. Like a storm that had finally passed. 2 years passed. Ayesha finished her degree. She got a job at an international consulting firm in Seoul. She rebuilt her life slowly on her own terms. And Minjun found her again. Not dramatically. Not with flowers or grand speeches. He simply called one evening and asked if she would like to get coffee. She said yes. They talked for hours that night. About everything they had both carried. About the year he had kept his distance to protect her. About the year she had spent not knowing the truth. About how much time they had lost. And how strange it felt to be sitting across from each other again, older, quieter, more careful. They didn't rush anything. But they didn't walk away either. Slowly they started again. 1 year later, Ayesha and Minjun stood in a small garden restaurant where she had once eaten her first Korean meal alone, scared and hopeful. They were surrounded by people they loved. His family, her mother who had flown in from the States, colleagues and friends. It was a good day. That evening she came home to find an envelope on her doormat. No return address. But she recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Jaehyun. Inside was a single photograph. A woman she had never seen before standing outside the prison walls. No caption. No context. Just a face looking directly at the camera like she knew she was being watched. On the back of the photograph, in Jaehyun's handwriting, "She knows who really killed my brother." Ayesha read those words twice. Senator Oh had confessed to arranging Taeyong's death. That much was already proven and on record. But Jaehyun was saying something else. He was saying the senator hadn't acted alone. Or that the senator was not who they thought he was. Or that somewhere in the chain of events that had destroyed his brother's life, there was still one more person no one had found yet. Ayesha set the photograph on her kitchen table. She looked at the woman's face for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and dialed the journalist. "I think there's one more story," she said.